The Earth stood on the edge of annihilation. Humanity had always known that the universe was vast, filled with beings far beyond their comprehension. But they had never imagined that the day would come when these beings would set their sights on Earth. The Zithians were the most powerful alien species the galaxy had ever known, and they had conquered countless worlds without mercy. They were brutal, cold, and relentless. Their massive warships had blotted out the sun as they entered the Earth's atmosphere. The people of Earth, unaware of what was coming, had only just begun to understand the scope of the invasion when it was already too late. The first attack was swift and devastating. Entire cities were leveled in a matter of hours. The Zithians didn't give humans a chance to fight back. They had superior technology, weapons that were unlike anything Earth had ever seen. The military tried to fight, but their weapons had no effect. The Zithian ships moved faster than anything the humans had, and their energy shields were impenetrable. Humans had no way to fight back. The aliens had made it clear Earth was theirs for the taking. Marcus, a soldier in the Earth Defense Forces, stood at the front lines with his comrades, watching as the sky above them became a battleground. The air was thick with smoke, and the ground shook with the sounds of explosions. He had seen horrors before, but this was unlike anything he had ever experienced. He'd watched as the Zithian forces ripped through their defenses with ease, and now it seemed like there was no hope left. His squad was running low on ammunition, and they had no reinforcements. The military command had been decimated, and Earth's remaining forces were scattered, struggling to hold on. It was a fight that no one could win. Despite the overwhelming odds, Marcus refused to give up. He had lost friends, comrades who had stood by his side, and now he fought for their memory. Every day, every hour, felt like it could be his last. But there was something different about this fight. He felt it in his bones, a strange sense of urgency, as though something was calling out to him. Something deep within the earth, something ancient, was waiting to be awakened. As Marcus and his squad moved through the ruins of what used to be a bustling city, they stumbled upon something strange. The ground beneath them trembled, and a faint humming noise filled the air. The buildings around them seemed to shimmer as if reality itself was bending. Marcus, always alert, signaled for his squad to halt. "What is that?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of distant explosions. One of his comrades, Lieutenant Emily Harris, pointed to the ground. "It's coming from below us. There's something down there." Without a word, Marcus motioned for them to follow him as they approached the source of the noise. The ground before them had cracked open, revealing a hidden passageway that led deep underground. The air that emanated from the opening felt different, thicker, colder. It was as if the very earth was alive, reacting to something, waiting for something. Marcus felt a strange pull toward the passage. It was as if the earth itself was calling to him, urging him to come closer. He turned to his squad, but they hesitated. "Are you sure about this, Marcus?" Harris asked, her face pale with worry. "We don't know what's down there. It could be a trap." Marcus nodded, determination in his eyes. "I don't think it's a trap. I think it's something we need. The Zithians have everything we don't: technology, weapons, power. But this could be our chance. We can't afford to ignore it." He led the way down the dark, narrow tunnel, his heart pounding with both fear and excitement. The passage seemed to stretch on forever, and the deeper they went, the more intense the humming sound became. It was almost deafening now, and Marcus felt a strange pressure on his chest, as though the very air was growing heavier. The walls of the tunnel were lined with ancient carvings, symbols that no one on Earth had ever seen before. They were unlike anything he had ever learned about in history. These were not human designs. These were something older, something from a time long before humans had walked the earth. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they reached a massive chamber. The walls of the room were made of a strange, smooth stone that glowed faintly in the dim light. In the center of the room stood a massive obelisk, its surface etched with more of those mysterious symbols. The humming sound was deafening now, and Marcus could feel the vibrations in his bones. He approached the obelisk cautiously, his breath quickening as he reached out to touch it. The moment his hand made contact with the stone, the chamber seemed to come alive. The ground shook beneath his feet, and a bright light erupted from the obelisk, blinding them all. Marcus stumbled backward, shielding his eyes from the intense glow. When the light faded, the chamber was silent once more, but something had changed. The air felt different now, charged with energy, and Marcus could feel a power, ancient and untapped, coursing through his body. It was as if the earth itself had given him something, a gift, a weapon, or perhaps even a key to victory. "Marcus, what the hell just happened?" Harris asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. She stared at him, wide-eyed, as though he were no longer the man she had known. Something had changed in him, something she couldn't explain. Marcus could barely answer. He felt different, stronger, more aware. The power that had awakened within him was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was as if he could feel the very pulse of the earth, its heart beating in time with his own. His senses were heightened, and his mind raced with possibilities. The power of the obelisk had unlocked something inside him, something that he could only begin to understand. But there was no time to waste. The Scythians were still out there, and the battle was far from over. As he turned to his squad, he knew that they had found something that could change everything. This was their chance to turn the tide, to fight back against the invaders who had brought humanity to the brink of extinction. "Let's move," Marcus said, his voice steady, but filled with determination. "We've got work to do." And so, with the ancient power of the earth coursing through him, Marcus and his squad left the chamber behind, ready to face the Scythians once more. But as they emerged from the tunnel, the full weight of what they had discovered began to settle in. The battle was just beginning, and the fate of humanity rested on Marcus's shoulders. Would this newfound power be enough to save Earth, or would it destroy them all? The Scythians were coming, and Marcus knew that there was no turning back. The world was descending into chaos. The human race had never faced such an overwhelming threat. The Scythians, a race of highly advanced, merciless conquerors, had set their sights on Earth. They had appeared out of nowhere, their enormous warships blurring across the sky in an instant, dwarfing anything Earth's military had ever seen. For months now, Earth's defenses had been shattered, its cities ravaged by advanced weapons that had no match on Earth. It was a war that humanity could not hope to win. Yet, amidst the destruction, a small glimmer of hope remained, Marcus and the strange power he had discovered in the Earth's depths. Days had passed since that moment in the chamber, and Marcus was still grappling with the enormous shift he felt within himself. His body hummed with energy, and his senses were sharper than ever. The air around him seemed to crackle with the strange force that now lived inside him. Every step he took felt more purposeful, more calculated. His mind raced with thoughts, not just of survival, but of a strange and growing certainty. This power, whatever it was not meant for him alone. It was meant to save Earth. Yet there were still so many questions. What exactly had the obelisk done to him? Was it a gift, a weapon, or something else entirely? Every time he tried to think too deeply about it, a headache would split his skull, and he'd have to push the thoughts aside. What mattered now was that the Scythians were still out there, and they had grown more determined. They were beginning to push their forces deeper into Earth's remaining strongholds. Marcus and his squad had made their way back to what was left of Earth's military command. The remnants of the human resistance had gathered in a secluded underground bunker, far from the destruction above. As they entered the command center, they were met with solemn faces and weary eyes. The people here had fought as long as they could, but they were running out of resources and hope. "Marcus," Colonel Davis greeted him with a tired smile, his voice raspy from days of command. "Glad to see you made it back." Marcus nodded, though his mind was far from the pleasantries. "We've found something," he said, glancing at his squad. "Something that could help us turn the tide." The colonel raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. I hope for your sake, it's more than wishful thinking. Our forces are scattered, our cities in ruins, and the Zithians are stronger than ever. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He couldn't blame the colonel for his doubt. After all, the situation was dire. I understand, he said, his voice quiet but firm. But I felt it. This power, it's like nothing I've ever experienced, and I believe it can help us win. But we need to understand it first. Colonel Davis stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. All right, we'll give you a chance, but time is running out. If this power of yours doesn't work, we may not have a planet left to fight for. Marcus turned toward his squad, his eyes meeting Harris. She nodded back, a silent understanding passing between them. Together, they would have to learn how to harness the mysterious force that had taken root inside Marcus. They didn't have much time, but they were determined to do whatever it took. Over the next few days, Marcus spent every waking moment experimenting with the power. He tried to understand how it worked, testing its limits. Sometimes, when he focused hard enough, he could manipulate objects with a mere thought. Other times, the energy within him would surge uncontrollably, and he would have to release it before it overwhelmed him. It wasn't easy, and he felt the strain on his body as the power slowly consumed him. Every time he used it, the strain grew worse, but he couldn't stop. Not now. As the days wore on, the Zithian forces continued their relentless advance. The human resistance was barely holding onto the last scraps of Earth's major cities, and it seemed that the inevitable was approaching. But in the quiet moments, when the tension felt like it might break the world apart, Marcus began to realize something. The power within him wasn't just a weapon. It was a link, a bridge to the Earth itself. He could feel the pulse of the planet, its breath, its heart. It was ancient, primal. It was as though the Earth had been waiting for someone to unlock its potential. It wasn't just about the fight. It was about survival. Not just for humanity, but for the planet. Earth wasn't done. Not yet. The final test came sooner than anyone expected. A massive Zithian fleet had gathered above what remained of Earth's largest remaining city. Marcus knew this was it. This was the final assault. The humans couldn't hold out much longer, and the Zithians were preparing to make their final push to claim Earth once and for all. Marcus and his squad made their way to the city, where the resistance had set up a final defense line. The atmosphere was tense, filled with the sounds of distant explosions and the hum of the Zithian ships hovering overhead. Marcus could feel the power inside him building to a fever pitch, ready to be unleashed. But he wasn't sure if he was ready. He had trained, tested, and learned. But this was different. This wasn't just a battle for survival. This was a battle for the future of the human race. As they approached the city's last stronghold, a sudden roar filled the air. A Zithian warship, larger than any Marcus had ever seen, loomed overhead. Its weapons were primed, ready to destroy everything in its path. The Zithians were preparing to make their final strike. Marcus's heart raced. He felt the Earth's pulse beneath him, its urgency mirrored in his own. He didn't have much time. He had to act. Now. He focused all his energy into the power inside him, channeling the strength of the Earth through his body. It was overwhelming, like trying to contain a storm inside of himself. The world around him seemed to slow down, and the ground beneath him cracked open. The sky lit up with the raw force of the Earth's energy, and Marcus felt it. He felt the very life of the planet surge through him, filling him with strength. With a primal scream, he released the energy. The force of it was blinding, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. When the light faded, Marcus stood, breathing heavily, surrounded by the remains of what had been the Zithian warship. The alien ship had been destroyed in an instant, its technology torn apart by the raw power that Marcus had unleashed. The Zithians had been defeated, but at what cost? Marcus collapsed to his knees, exhausted. His body trembled as the power inside him began to burn out, leaving him weak. But it was done. The Scythians had been driven back, and humanity had a chance to survive. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time in months, Marcus felt a sense of hope. It wasn't just humanity's fight anymore. It was Earth's fight. And Earth had won. The power of the Earth was with them now. The Scythians had underestimated humanity. And now, they would learn just how wrong they had been. The wind howled through the ruins of the once thriving city. Marcus struggled to his feet, his legs shaking beneath him as he looked out over the battlefield. The Scythian warship had been obliterated, but the victory had come at a great cost. His body felt like it was made of stone, each movement a struggle as if he were dragging himself through thick mud. The energy that had surged within him was fading fast, leaving him drained and hollow. He could feel it. His connection to the power was slowly slipping away, like water draining through his fingers. The Scythians had underestimated humanity, and now they would pay the price. But Marcus knew this wasn't the end. It couldn't be. The battle had only just begun. As he steadied himself, he glanced at his squad, who had been watching from a distance. Harris was the first to approach, her eyes filled with a mixture of awe and concern. She had seen him unleash the raw power of the Earth, and watched as he brought down the Scythian ship with nothing but his will. But now, seeing the toll it had taken on him, she wasn't sure if that power was a gift or a curse. "Marcus, are you okay?" Harris asked, her voice laced with worry. Marcus shook his head, trying to muster a smile. "I'll be fine, but we need to keep moving. The Scythians are still out there, and they won't stop. Not now. You're barely standing, Marcus. You've been through hell. We need to get you back to base, get you help," Harris insisted, but Marcus waved her off. "We don't have time for that," he said, his voice hoarse but determined. "The Scythians will regroup, and we need to hit them while they're still reeling from this. We have the upper hand. For now." She hesitated but nodded, knowing there was no convincing him when he was like this. Marcus had always been driven by something deeper than duty. He fought for survival, for hope. He had always believed that humanity could survive anything if they fought hard enough. But now, as he looked around the battlefield, he saw the devastation the Scythians had wrought. He knew that even if they won this fight, the war was far from over. Together, they moved through the city, weaving through the wreckage of buildings that had once been filled with life. The world around them seemed quieter now, as if holding its breath after the violent storm that had passed. The air was thick with smoke, and the scent of burning rubble lingered in the air. But Marcus's focus was sharp. He had to keep moving. The Scythians were far from defeated, and they had to prepare for the next stage of the war. As they reached the remains of what had been a military command center, Marcus felt a sudden unease. Something was wrong. The building was eerily silent, and there were no signs of movement. They had expected to find more resistance forces here, but all that remained were abandoned supplies and empty rooms. "Where is everyone?" Harris asked, scanning the area. "This was supposed to be our rally point." Marcus's heart sank. He had a sinking feeling that something was off, that the Scythians were playing a deeper game than they had realized. He motioned for his squad to move cautiously, their weapons ready. They had learned the hard way that the Scythians were masters of deception, and Marcus wasn't about to let his guard down. They entered the command center, moving quietly through the darkened hallways. The building was in disarray, papers and equipment scattered everywhere, as if there had been a hasty evacuation. But there were no bodies, no signs of any struggle. It was as though the place had been abandoned in a hurry, but for what reason? A low hum filled the air, and Marcus's skin prickled. He recognized it instantly. The same hum that had come from the obelisk. The energy was still there, somehow, pulsing beneath the building. His heart skipped a beat. The power he had felt before, the force that had connected him to the earth, was here again. But this time, it wasn't just within him. It was everywhere. Harris stopped, her eyes widening as she realized what he was sensing. "Marcus, what is that?" "I don't know," he replied, his voice tense. But we need to find out. They followed the hum deeper into the facility, moving through corridors until they reached a massive underground chamber. At the center of the room stood another obelisk, similar to the one Marcus had found before, but this one was different. It was bigger, darker, and the energy emanating from it felt wrong. There was no warmth, no connection to the Earth's life force. This power was cold, artificial, and twisted. Marcus's instincts screamed at him to stay away, but he couldn't. He had to know. He had to understand what was happening. He stepped forward, his body aching, but the pull of the energy was too strong. As he neared the obelisk, he could feel something stirring inside it, something ancient and angry. The ground beneath him trembled, and a low growl seemed to resonate through the chamber. "Marcus, stop," Harris cried, but it was too late. The moment his hand made contact with the obelisk, the chamber erupted in a blinding flash of light. For a moment, Marcus lost all sense of time and space. It was as if the world itself had shattered, and he was falling through the very fabric of reality. Pain shot through his body, and he heard a voice, a dark, echoing voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Foolish human," the voice growled. "You have awakened what should never have been touched. You have no idea what you are dealing with." Marcus's vision cleared, and he found himself standing alone in a vast, empty void. The power within him surged, and he could feel the obelisk's energy trying to consume him. It was a force unlike anything he had ever felt. It was ancient, malicious, and it was hungry. He tried to pull away, but the energy held him in place, its tendrils wrapping around his mind, trying to break him. He gritted his teeth, his body shaking with the strain. The Earth's power had been a gift, a connection to life itself. But this was something else. It was destruction. The voice spoke again, its tone mocking. "You think you can stop the Scythians? You are nothing compared to what I have to offer. Join me, human. Together, we can crush them. We can burn this world to the ground and rebuild it in our image." Marcus's heart raced, but he shook his head, trying to resist the pull. He couldn't fall for this. He couldn't be swayed by the darkness. He had fought too hard, had come too far, to let this power corrupt him. "No," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the terror he felt. "I fight for humanity. I fight for Earth. I won't let you destroy it." With everything he had left, Marcus forced himself to break free from the obelisk's grip. The energy fought him, but he pushed through, the Earth's power inside him flaring up once more. The ground beneath him cracked, and the chamber exploded with light as the dark energy was repelled. Marcus collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. He had won, for now. But he knew that this was only the beginning. The Scythians were still coming, and now something darker than them had awakened. And Marcus wasn't sure if he was strong enough to stop it. The battle had only just begun, but already the stakes were higher than Marcus had ever imagined. The power he had found within the Earth had already given him more than he had ever hoped for, but now he realized there were dangers beyond the Scythians. Something much older, much darker, had awakened. As he lay on the cold, shattered ground, struggling to catch his breath, he understood one harsh truth: the Scythians were not the only threat to humanity. The obelisk's energy had opened a doorway to something far worse, a force that was intent on consuming everything in its path. Marcus's mind reeled as he pulled himself to his feet. His body ached, drained from the power he had used to push back the dark energy. It had felt like a battle of wills between him and the ancient force within the obelisk, but he had only managed to contain it, not defeat it. The shadowy presence still lingered, just beneath the surface of his thoughts, whispering temptations of power that he could not ignore. But Marcus wasn't sure how long he could fight it off. Harris knelt beside him, her face etched with concern, but her eyes flickered with admiration. She had seen Marcus face unimaginable forces, and yet she saw the same man who had once led her through countless battles. But now She could see the toll it had taken on him. The fire that once burned so brightly in his eyes had dimmed, replaced by a quiet uncertainty. She could feel the weight of it, the weight of being humanity's last hope. "Marcus," Harris said softly, her voice a touch strained. "What was that? What did we just awaken?" Marcus's throat tightened as he looked at the obelisk, still glowing faintly in the darkness of the chamber. "I don't know," he admitted, "but it's not done with me. I can feel it. It's pulling at me. I can't explain it, but it's as if it's trying to take control, trying to make me its vessel. Then we need to get you out of here. We need to get back to the others," Harris urged, helping him to his feet. Marcus shook his head slowly, still disoriented. "I can't just walk away from this. If we leave it, we're only giving it time to grow stronger. The Zithians aren't the only ones who will come for Earth. This thing, it wants something far worse." Harris looked uncertain, but she understood. The fight with the Zithians had already cost them too much, but the threat of something worse, something that could erase everything they had fought for, was a burden too great to ignore. "We'll deal with this together," she said firmly, squeezing his shoulder. "But we need a plan. We can't take on the entire universe alone." Marcus nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He had to stop this. He had to stop whatever force had been unleashed, and he had to make sure it never touched Earth again. But something deep inside him warned him that it wasn't that simple. The dark force was already inside him. He could feel it, lingering just beneath the surface, tempting him with promises of power, enough power to end the war, to crush the Zithians, to rebuild Earth in his image. "No," he whispered under his breath, trying to shake the thought away. "I can't. Let it control me." His mind felt heavy, like it was being pulled in multiple directions at once. He had to stay focused. For Earth, for humanity. "Marcus, you're scaring me," Harris said, her voice tight with concern. "You're not yourself. We need to get back to base. We need to regroup. We need to figure out what comes next." Marcus looked at her, his gaze clouded, as if he were seeing her for the first time. "I know," he said, his voice hollow, "but something tells me the next battle won't be fought with weapons. It will be fought inside of me." Harris took a step back, eyes wide, as the full weight of his words sank in. She had never seen Marcus like this. He had always been a rock, unshakable in his determination. But now he seemed lost, like he was fighting a war on two fronts, the one against the Zithians and the one inside himself. "Then we'll fight it together," she said, her voice filled with unwavering resolve. "We've faced impossible odds before. We'll do it again." But Marcus didn't answer right away. He was too busy listening to the faint whispers in his mind, the dark voice that was growing louder by the day. He could feel the temptation, like a slow pull toward the darkness. It offered him power, offered him victory. But at what cost? Harris's words finally broke through the fog in his mind. She was right. The fight was far from over. The Zithians were still out there, and if he didn't find a way to control the energy within him, he would lose everything. "We need to get back to the others," Marcus said finally, his voice firm. "We can't fight this alone. We'll need all the help we can get, but we're running out of time. The Zithians won't wait for us to figure this out." With that, he pushed forward, leading the way out of the chamber. As they moved through the wreckage of the underground facility, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking toward something he couldn't escape. The dark energy within him was growing, whispering, urging him to embrace it. And with every step, he felt himself slipping further away from who he used to be. They finally reached the surface, and the sight that met them was both familiar and horrifying. The city was a wasteland. What had once been a thriving hub of life was now reduced to rubble, a mere shadow of its former self. The Zithians had ravaged everything in their path. But even worse, Marcus could sense something else. The air itself seemed heavy with the dark energy that had followed them from the obelisk. It had seeped into the land, into the sky, and now, It was everywhere. The wind picked up, carrying with it the faint hum of the obelisk's power. Marcus stopped in his tracks, his heart racing. He looked at Harris, who had stopped beside him, her face a mixture of fear and determination. "This is it," Marcus said, his voice tight. "It's already spreading. We have to find a way to stop it before it's too late." Harris nodded, but there was no denying the fear in her eyes. "We'll do whatever it takes. Together." And so, with that, Marcus and his squad set off toward the last remnants of humanity's stronghold, their resolve steeled. The Zithians were still out there, their ships scattered across the sky. But Marcus knew that the greatest threat to Earth wasn't their alien invaders. It was the dark power that now lived inside him, threatening to consume everything in its path. He had to find a way to stop it before it destroyed not just the planet, but himself. The remnants of the human resistance were scattered across what remained of Earth's cities, fighting desperate battles against the Zithians, who seemed to grow stronger with every passing day. Marcus, still reeling from the dark energy that pulsed through him, knew they couldn't afford to wait much longer. The fight against the Zithians was no longer just a fight for Earth. It was a fight for his soul, for humanity's survival, and for control of the very power that had been awakened within him. The wind whipped across the desolate battlefield as Marcus and his squad approached the last major stronghold of human resistance. It was a makeshift base, buried deep underground, and it was their final refuge. The hum of alien ships filled the air, distant yet unmistakable, and the ground trembled beneath their feet with every passing moment. Marcus didn't look back at the ruins of the city. He couldn't. Every inch of the land he had once fought so fiercely to protect was now nothing more than a memory. The dark energy inside him continued to gnaw at his thoughts, urging him to embrace it. But every time he reached for it, something inside him rebelled. The temptation was overwhelming, but he couldn't let it win. Not yet. As they descended into the underground base, the tension was palpable. Colonel Davis, the leader of the human resistance, greeted them at the entrance, his face grim but with a hint of relief at seeing Marcus alive. The colonel had seen too much in this war, too many victories, too many losses, but he knew one thing for certain. Marcus was the key to any hope they had left. "Marcus," Davis said, his voice rough with exhaustion, "you're just in time. We've been hearing rumors. The Zithians are preparing for a final strike, one that could end everything. We need your help. We need the power you've unlocked." Marcus nodded, but the weight of the situation pressed heavily on him. "I don't know if I can control it," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "Every time I try, it tries to consume me. I can feel it, Colonel. It wants me. It wants all of us." Davis's eyes flickered with concern, but quickly steeled himself. "Then we'll fight it together. We need a plan. The Zithians have underestimated us for too long. It's time we hit them with everything we've got." They gathered around a map of the remaining resistance forces, planning their next move. But Marcus's mind was elsewhere, focused on the dark whispers that seemed to come from inside him. The energy within him was growing stronger, pulsating in time with his heartbeat, and he could feel it beckoning, coaxing him to use it to its fullest potential. "Marcus," Harris whispered, coming up beside him, "we're not alone in this. We've always fought together, and we will again. You don't have to face this alone." Her words reached him, pulling him from the abyss that seemed to open inside his mind. He turned to look at her, the one person who had always stood by him. His friend, his ally, the one person who understood the toll this war had taken. "You're right," he muttered, "but we have to stop the Zithians. I've seen what they're capable of. They won't stop until they've destroyed every last trace of humanity." Harris squeezed his shoulder, offering a rare, reassuring smile. "We'll stop them. We always do." Marcus's eyes lingered on the map, but his mind raced with conflicting thoughts. He couldn't fight the Zithians and this dark power at the same time, not without risking everything. But he had no choice. If he didn't find a way to control it, he would lose himself, and in doing so, he would lose the very thing he was trying to protect. Hours later, as the resistance forces prepared for their final assault, Marcus stood outside the base, looking out over the barren landscape. The distant hum of the Zithian ships grew louder, and his senses were on edge. The dark energy within him thrummed, and he knew it was only a matter of time before it took full control. His mind flashed back to the first time he had discovered the obelisk. The power had been overwhelming, but it had also felt like a gift. He had believed that with it, humanity would have a chance. But now he wasn't so sure. The more he used it, the more it twisted him, feeding off his doubts and fears. "I can't let this win," Marcus muttered to himself. His breath came in sharp gasps, and he closed his eyes, trying to center himself. The power was so close now, and he could feel the temptation once more. But he fought it. This time, he would not fall. The resistance launched their final assault against the Zithians. Explosions rocked the earth as the Zithian ships unleashed their devastating firepower. The remaining cities were nothing but smoldering ruins, and humanity's fight for survival had become a desperate race against time. But Marcus wasn't focused on the battlefield. He was focused on the power inside him. It was rising, surging toward him, calling him to use it. He could feel it against his skin, like a storm just waiting to break. Harris was by his side, her hand on his arm. "We can't wait much longer, Marcus. The Zithians are almost through our defenses. We need to act now." Marcus's heart raced. He couldn't delay any longer. The power was too great, and he had no choice but to face it head-on. If he didn't, it would consume him, and the planet along with it. With a deep breath, Marcus reached inside himself, tapping into the raw force that had been awakened. The power surged, and he felt the ground beneath him tremble. The world around him slowed to a crawl as he connected with the energy deep within the earth. But this time, it wasn't just a force of nature. It was the voice of the planet itself, calling to him. For a brief moment, Marcus was lost in the overwhelming power. He could feel every crack in the earth, every pulse of life beneath him. It was beautiful and terrifying. The Zithians' final assault hit with full force. The ground beneath Marcus's feet shook, and the sky above them seemed to crack. But Marcus stood firm, drawing on every ounce of power he had. He was not going to let it win. Not today. "Now," he shouted, his voice booming across the battlefield. With a roar, he released the full force of the energy. The sky lit up as the very earth responded to his command. A shockwave of raw power surged outward, obliterating Zithian ships and cutting through their forces like a knife through butter. The alien invaders, once so confident in their superior technology, had no chance against the sheer force of nature itself. But the cost was immense. The power surged through Marcus's body, draining him to the brink of collapse. He could feel himself slipping away, but he couldn't stop now. Not when victory was within reach. When the dust finally settled, the Zithians were gone. The battlefield was quiet, the only sound the wind whipping through the rubble. Humanity had won, against impossible odds. But as Marcus fell to his knees, exhaustion washing over him, he knew the war wasn't truly over. The dark power within him still lingered, waiting for its next moment to strike. For now, humanity had survived. But Marcus's fight was far from over. He would need to find a way to live with the power inside him, to ensure it never consumed him or the earth. And so, with the Zithians defeated and the world still standing, Marcus made a vow. He would fight, not just for humanity, but for himself, for the earth, and for the future. The battle was far from over, but humanity had proven something crucial. Even in the darkest of times, one person's strength could change everything, and that strength would carry them into the future.